Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Trebas Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
TikTok's days could be numbered here in the United States. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Today, the House of Representatives passed a bill that would force the social media app's Chinese parent company to sell to an American owner or be pulled from U.S. app stores. It passed overwhelmingly, but San Diego lawmakers are split on the issue. Karen Kafa reports on what it would mean for TikTok users if the bill is signed into law.
In this current political climate, it is very rare for legislation to get this kind of broad bipartisan support, especially in the U.S. House. But members from both sides of the aisle citing national security concerns around a social media platform that has more than 170 million users in the U.S. Many of those users now worried, though, about what happens next. The clock may soon be running out on TikTok. In a rare show of bipartisanship, the U.S. House of Representatives passing a bill Tuesday that would prohibit TikTok from U.S. app stores unless the platform is divested from its China-linked parent company ByteDance within the next 5 months.
This is not a bill to ban TikTok. They just need to sell TikTok to an American owner.
Legislators and intelligence officials warn the app leaves American users vulnerable to the Chinese government.
We know that TikTok has been manipulating information. We know that they have access to Americans' private data. And we know that if asked by the Chinese Communist Party to turn that over, they are by law required to do so.
China calling the move, quote, an act of bullying, while some members of Congress worry about generational impact.
I don't think it'll be helpful with young voters. Taking a step back, I just think it's bad policy.
Many of the roughly 170 million American users, too, have raised concerns.
If you vote for this ban, you are voting against my First Amendment and my way of freedom of speech. You are voting against my small business.
But proponents argue the bill does not infringe upon user speech.
It cannot be used to censor speech. It takes no position at all on the content of speech, only foreign adversary control.
In a statement, TikTok said it will now focus on the Senate, where the fate of the legislation is unclear. And amid all the chatter today, for TikTok users watching right now, it's important to note there will be no immediate changes to the app. The bill still needs to make its way through the U.S. Senate and to the president's desk before any changes would take effect. The federal government and more than half of U.S. states have restricted the use of TikTok on government devices, but this move toward restricting personal devices will likely face some court challenges on First Amendment grounds. In Washington, I'm Karen Kafa.
San Diego's congressional delegation was split on the vote and not necessarily along party lines. Republican Representative Darrell Issa voted yes, along with Democratic Representatives Mike Levin and Scott Peters. Two other local Democrats, Representatives Sarah Jacobs and Juan Vargas, voted no.
Well, tonight, looking a little further ahead, we are dropping down to a low of 52. Now, we'll deal with mostly clear skies, so really not too bad. But as we head into Thursday, those winds are really going to start to ramp up again. We'll show you the areas most at risk for damaging winds and when we could see our next chance for rain. Stick with us.
5 families whose homes were damaged during January's floods are taking legal action against National City. They all live next to each other on East 8th Street and say they lost everything in the flood. They believe it's because the city neglected to open a grate near their homes, causing debris to clog the storm drain. Sherry Goji is one of the homeowners, and she says she wants the city to pay not only to rebuild her home, but also for hospital bills.
I love National City, and I love our home. My son suffered a bacterial infection sitting in the water for 2.5 hours holding on to his dad. So I'm going to hope that the city realizes this is something they need to take care of.
The claims were filed on November 29th against National City. The families are now in a 45-day window, giving the city time to respond. If the city denies their claim, the attorney representing the families will have 6 months to file a lawsuit. The county is developing an affordable housing complex in Choyas View. The neighborhood sits at the southeast intersection of the 94 and 805. KPBS reporter Katie Heisen looked into why neighbors are pushing back.
137 apartments for low and extremely low income seniors, with on-site childcare and a community garden. That's the plan for the Market Street lot that used to house Health and Human Services and now sits empty. The county's housing director, David Estrella, says the project meets a dire need.
For our seniors that are on fixed income, that are struggling to meet their daily needs and really don't have as many opportunities for maintaining their housing, a property such as this one will provide them the kind of stability that they need.
The county has a housing crisis. A spokesperson says it's short about 120,000 homes. They plan to build at least 10,000 affordable units on government land by 2030. State law requires them to use no longer needed surplus land for affordable housing whenever possible. There's 11 such sites so far, most in the San Diego metro area, including this lot in Choice View. Area neighbors say it's a great plan for somewhere else.
We're going to oppose this, and you should look forward to having robust community opposition.
Here, they say it's worsening issues the civil rights movement tried to address.
The same problems that we had in 1963 is the same conversations we're having now. More school, segregation, the concentration of poverty.
Mary Young sits on the planning group for the area, which the state defines as a low resource. It has higher poverty and lower education, employment, and home values. Residents argue locating this development here would raise that poverty level. Young says the county's land use choices are making disparities worse.
They make these decisions to continue layering poverty on top of poverty on top of poverty and thinking that the outcome may be somehow different.
Research indicates this issue is racially skewed. Poor white families tend to live in communities with lower poverty levels overall. Poor Black and Latino families more often live in communities with higher poverty overall and face hardships that result from personal poverty colliding with community poverty. Less resourced schools, less safety, more police violence, lower quality housing. Choice View is mostly Black and Latino. Young says small decisions, like where to locate one affordable housing complex, chip away at the residents' long-term growth.
Whatever wealth that everybody is talking about that we should be building, it doesn't happen because it's chiseled away.
Years before news of this complex, the planning group published priorities for development in their neighborhoods. They said the ground level of mixed-use lots should be for things like retail, offices, grocery, and drugstores. There should be affordable home ownership opportunities, not just rentals, for middle-income households to help alleviate the community's overall poverty. They ask why the development doesn't follow these goals and say the county didn't consult with them before hiring a developer. Jacinta Hinojosa, who lives near the lot, says the affordable housing complex was news to her neighbors.
A lot of people don't know things are getting built around your community, and we need to do more because some people don't have the time to attend or working, or they don't have the right language.
She and her son Alonso want to see the lot used for a park, something to help ease the effects of climate change, like the recent flooding, she says, which hit low-income neighborhoods of color the hardest. There are few green spaces in Choice View that aren't schools or cemeteries. Planning group members argue the land didn't have to be declared surplus. It could have been used for something, like a park. The affordable housing could be located somewhere with more resources to give the seniors a shot at better outcomes without worsening already existing poverty. Housing Director David Estrella says he understands their concerns, but he also hears from people who need affordable housing.
Folks that are formerly homeless, folks that are, just starting off their families, folks that have that have jobs that are working and just can't find a place nearby where their work is. And so we balance the needs of the region and the community in itself.
The developers plan to break ground as early as December of next year. Community members say they may also be there with picket signs. Katie Hyson, KPBS News.
In the previous story, we reported about legal action being taken by flood victims in National City, and I mentioned that their claim against the city was filed on November 29th. That claim was actually filed on February 29th. And now to our next story. Local healthcare providers are talking about the increase in major injuries suffered by those trying to cross into the United States. UC San Diego Health says it has treated 500 people with brain injuries in recent years. The time period coincides with the work done to increase the size of the border wall in the San Diego area. One neurosurgeon says each case can cost around $250,000 to treat.
It's particularly striking when you're taking care of a severely injured patient that's shackled to the gurney that they're coming into the operating room on. It's a visual that is just really, it affects you.
And recent numbers from the Border Patrol show more than 750,000 people were encountered trying to cross the southern border from last October through January. 120,000 of those encounters were in the San Diego area. President Biden is campaigning in the battleground state of Wisconsin today, but while he's working to quell concerns over his age, former special counsel Robert Hur testified in Congress about his investigation into the president's handling of classified documents. Julia Benbrook has more on the impact it could have on the race.
During Tuesday's House Judiciary Committee hearing, several Democrats went after former special counsel Robert Hur for his comments about President Joe Biden's memory lapses. Hur referred to Biden as a well-meaning elderly man in the report released last month about his classified documents probe.
President Biden probably committed a verbal slip or two during the interview, and I'm not sure any of that matters.
Republicans pressed Hur on why he didn't charge Biden, despite the evidence of classified documents in Biden's possession.
But in the end, it boils down to a few key facts. Joe Biden kept classified information. Joe Biden failed to properly secure classified information.
During his testimony, Hur strongly rejected the assertion that he'd exonerated the president, saying he didn't even use the term in his report. But the White House says Hur's decision not to charge Biden is evidence the president is innocent.
The facts and evidence over 15 months of investigating proved that there is no case here.
Lawmakers also focused on the criminal charges former President Donald Trump faces for his handling of classified documents. Even though Hur has nothing to do with that investigation, his report noted the distinctions between the Trump and Biden cases. Among them, Biden's attorneys notified the National Archives of the materials found in his possession. In Trump's case, the National Archives repeatedly tried and failed to get back the documents. At one point, the FBI secured a search warrant for his Florida estate. Reporting in Washington, I'm Julia Benbrook.
Boeing's slew of recent mechanical problems is having a ripple effect on the economy. Southwest Airlines says it plans to hire less people this year because Boeing, its aircraft supplier, is expected to deliver far fewer planes due to safety concerns. United Airlines is also cutting back on pilot hiring because Boeing's expected manufacturing and certification delays. Analysts say these problems could end up costing Boeing billions.
It is indeed. It's an unmitigated disaster for Boeing. That they have fallen to this level is really quite distressing.
The National Transportation Safety Board is investigating the January 5th Alaska Airlines flight where part of a 737 MAX door plug blew off of the side of a plane. The Federal Aviation Administration says it's given Boeing until May to come up with a plan to fix issues listed in a federal audit. Democratic mayors in California are supporting a new ballot measure that would toughen punishments for selling drugs and retail theft. The legislation would roll back parts of Proposition 47, which was approved by California voters 10 years ago, to alleviate overcrowding in jails by reducing punishments for crimes like drug possession. Veronica Miracle has more.
On this San Jose street, it's no secret among neighbors.
Hi.
Nice to meet you. That Marlene Hardin's teen daughter was killed by fentanyl poisoning. Complications of combined fentanyl, sertraline. Chloe got a Percocet from a dealer on Snapchat, Hardin says, but the pill was laced with fentanyl.
Had to make the toughest decision of my life, and that was to take her off life support.
Lax California criminal policies, she believes, are part of the reason Chloe died.
They're coming into the court through the court system, getting a slap on the wrist, and getting sent home.
But a new proposal called the Homelessness, Drug Addiction, and Theft Reduction Act is giving Hardin hope. It would overturn parts of the controversial Proposition 47, which was approved by California voters 10 years ago to reduce overcrowding in jails by reducing punishments for some crimes. It turned most drug possession offenses from felonies to misdemeanors. This new proposal would create harsher penalties for people who deal fentanyl and other hard drugs. Another big component of the proposed law, targeting chronic and repeated retail theft. Currently, under Prop 47, if someone steals less than $950 in merchandise, in most cases, they'll be charged with a misdemeanor. It's why some argue retail theft has skyrocketed in recent years. Things got so bad, this San Francisco Walgreens resorted to padlocking ice cream. This entire row is basically locked up. At one point, Walgreens said this store had the highest theft rate of any of their stores in the entire country. Under the new proposal, repeat offenders could be charged with a felony. And while this proposal has garnered predictable support from big retailers and Republicans across the state, with dozens of lawmakers and district attorneys signing on in support, it has another unlikely champion. You are breaking from the party on this issue.
I don't see this as a partisan issue. This is about keeping people safe.
San Francisco Mayor London Breed is one of just 3 Democratic mayors supporting the proposal. It comes as she faces a tough re-election campaign and a city full of voters frustrated with crime and blight.
They want us to hold people accountable, especially people who are violent criminals accountable. They want to make sure that their communities aren't destroyed.
Do you think that maybe the rest of the country is going to see this and think maybe liberal policies don't entirely work?
I don't think it's fair to say that liberal policies don't work. We're not abandoning San Francisco values of second chances and compassion and support and help. Those things will continue in addition to the accountability.
For Breed and many others, this is a nuanced issue. Tan Tran spent 10 years behind bars, most of his time in state prison for attempted robbery and attempted murder.
Sometimes I can't believe that's even me.
Tran believes fixing the root of the problem is the only way to freedom.
The mental health issues of poverty, right, of all of these different issues that we don't necessarily want to address. It's easier to be like, oh, they have a criminal problem.
The problem may have different solutions and could be in the hands of California voters again this fall.
A California lawmaker wants to ban schools from serving foods with synthetic food dyes that have been linked to cancer, hyperactivity, and behavioral issues in children. Assemblymember Jesse Gabriel formally unveiled the Assembly Bill 2316 yesterday. It's considered to be the first in the nation. It would prohibit public schools from serving 6 artificial dyes that can be found in foods like candy, ice cream, cereal, baked goods, flavored milks, and more. The California State Parks Foundation is warning about the impact climate change is having on public lands. KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson says the group wants the state to invest in parks for the future.
Okay, what we're looking at is one of the former very dense groves of Torrey pine tree, probably the densest in the reserve.
Darren Smith says Torrey Pine State Reserve is already feeling the effects of climate change. He says those now dead Torrey pine trees were ravaged by a bark beetle infestation after the conifers were weakened by years of drought and hot temperatures. Torrey Pines is just one of nearly 300 state parks that need help becoming more resilient to climate change.
My identity as a San Diegan is tied into being able to see and visit places like this close to my home, close to the coast.
A new report from the California State Parks Foundation says wildfires, drought, and storms are just some of the climate-fueled events putting pressure on the state's natural areas.
They more broadly, I think, represent what we love about California, from redwoods to beaches to deserts to mountains. And as such, they're just really important places.
The report calls for a steady stream of state funding to build climate-resilient state parks. It warns that 75% of the state's beaches will disappear by the end of the century. The study calls for $50 million a year to implement a sea level rise strategy, additional money for land acquisition, and making parks climate-resilient centers, among other things.
Even if it's to the tune of 10, 15, $20 million a year, which, yes, to you and I is a lot of money. To the state of California that has, a $93 billion budget, it's not a lot of money.
Norton hopes funding for parks will be included in an environmental bond measure being prepared for the November ballot. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
Well, let's start off with our weather headlines, what you need to know as we head throughout the rest of this week and even into next week. We are going to talk about some Santa Ana winds pushing into the area on Thursday. Again, some of those winds could be damaging, especially there for the more mountainous terrain. Now, we are also tracking a late week chance for showers to move back into the area, though as we head into early next week, warmer and drier conditions on tap. Now, for tonight, we're dropping down to 46 in Oceanside, a little bit warmer in San Diego with a low of 52, Ramona 43, and Borrego Springs dropping down to a low of 47, but Mount Laguna at 29. As we head into tomorrow, though, we are talking about some clouds, but overall you will see some sunshine. High is going to be in the upper 60s, low 70s from San Diego all the way up the Oceanside. Meanwhile, Borrego Springs is going to be flirting with 70, and Mount Laguna talking about a few showers pushing on through as well. Again, like I said, we do have a Santa Ana wind event on tap, and that's going to really cause some concern Wednesday night through Thursday, especially Thursday morning as that wind direction changes to a north-northwesterly flow. We are talking about some localized wind damage, an elevated fire weather threat, and also dangerous crosswinds gusting between 50 to 70 miles per hour. But look, your accurate local storm max holds at 100 miles per hour, so we could see winds as high as that, so be on high alert. There are high wind watches in effect through parts of Riverside and San Bernardino counties. Again, heads up, we are talking about some very gusty conditions. Now along the coast, we are going to be cooling just slightly Friday, but not by much. 73 for your high on Thursday. Again, it is going to be quite windy. Friday, 68. By Saturday, we're back up to the 70s again. And by Sunday, well, we'll see some clouds and sun. And it's just going to be pleasant as we head into next week with a little bit of warmer air pushing back in. Meanwhile, areas further inland, again, partly sunny. It is going to be breezy for our Thursday, but we'll have a mix of sun and clouds there on after. I'm not going to rule out, though, a stray shower, but those chances do rise as we head towards the mountains. Again, Thursday, very windy. I'm not going to rule out a shower. That's going to be the story as we head into Friday as well. High is just going to be in the mid-30s. That shower chance is going to stick with us through the beginning of the weekend and then return again as we head into Monday. Let's look at the deserts. 69 for the high on Thursday. We're dropping down to 66 by Friday, but then we are back up to the 70s by the end of the weekend heading into next week. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Bree Guy.
The future is a little bit clearer tonight for some San Diego high school students given a new pair of glasses. As KPBS education reporter MG Perez tells us, a community partnership provided many of them with free exams and eye care for the very first time.
I think one's better.
Okay, what about number 3?
15-year-old Mariah Jordan is seeing eye to eye with an optometrist like never before.
I thought I only had one bad eye, but I guess I have two, so.
Mariah is a junior joining other classmates in their first ever eye exams here on the campus of the 37 ECB Community School in City Heights. She's really needed this.
Driving at nighttime, it's really hard for me to see, and I always squint. From like when I see somebody far away, I always have to squint. I can't really see from that far.
Excellent. Adolfo Rosales is a sophomore with sight problems of his own.
I normally like sitting in the back, but to see the board, I need to be at the front. most of the time because I can't really see.
The San Diego County Office of Education has partnered with VSP Vision Eyes of Hope, the first nonprofit eye health company, providing services to underserved and marginalized communities. These students are being helped because their families don't have vision insurance. But in many cases, they will have a new pair of glasses by the end of the day.
After they get their glasses, a lot of the teachers report that the kids are more engaged in the classroom, their grades are improving, they're able to pay attention more just because they can see better.
VSP brings eye care to students by taking their lab and equipment on the road, with mobile clinics staffed with workers who can create eyeglasses in just a few minutes. There is a fleet of 3 of these mobile eye clinics, and they travel across the country, always offering free eye care and glasses to people who need them most.
I like these. Ooh, I like these. These.
Mariah Jordan is a satisfied customer.
I was feeling very stylish and cute, like a cute little girl in some glasses.
Over the next couple of days, at least 70 students will be allowed to see the world differently.
They're just going through life. They think that's how life is. When they're able to put their glasses on at the end of the day, and they're like, their eyes open up and like, this is what the world is supposed to look like. Trees have leaves.
And students have plenty of smiles. MG Perez, KPBS News.
I'm Jeff Bennett. Tonight on the NewsHour, a bipartisan House majority passes legislation that could result in the U.S. banning TikTok. That's at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Good night.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, and air restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.